Ladies and gentlemen, returning to YouTube, the ever-popular Australian watch authority, Time+Tide.
Jaeger Le-Coultre. We have 3 new watches from JLC, and we're calling in a friend of ours, Sandra Lane, who is in New Zealand, to talk us through this collection. I have my handy Bluetooth headphones ready to go, and we're going to cross to Zoom and ask Sandra what she thinks of this new collection. Hello, Sandra.
Hey, Andrew. Here we are, not in Geneva.
We are so not in Geneva. Where are you?
I'm in New Zealand. I got stranded here when I was visiting some family members back at the end of February, beginning of March, and here I am.
Pity levels are very low considering that spectacular backdrop. But I just wonder, this is a new challenge for us. Can we talk about watches when we're not, knocking around the halls of the Pal Expo in Geneva? Should we try this? Should we try and talk about Jaeger Le-Coultre and see how we go?
I think so. What's most unusual for me and for you and for all of us, our colleagues, is that we're not able to handle any of the watches in the metal. And that's really strange. I think we're very lucky in that a lot of the collections are, let's say, they are revivals or changes or adaptations of previous collections. So we have fortunately been able to hold some of these watches' predecessors in our hands before. So that's a big help.
We've held master controls, and I think that's where we should start. It's a manly beginning, the 1-2 punch.
Yeah, I think, master control, it's been a pillar of Jaeger Le-Coultre's collections for a long time. It sometimes gets a little, forgotten's the wrong word, that's not fair. Not forgotten, but let's say because it is such a classic, amazing collection, and it's all about just being really good technically, without spectacular bells and whistles, no gimmicks, nothing. We tend to slightly forget about it. And I think Jaeger Le-Coultre has done a lovely job this year in reintroducing the collection with a new case, new dials. It's just given a contemporary tweak, a new feel to it, and a lot of technical updates as well.
Do you have any sexy facts about some of these updates that have stood out to you? Because it's to the naked eye, this is going to be a trained eye that needs to really pull out some of these details that have been upgraded or changed.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the aesthetic, the case is subtly different. And if you were to hold old and new right side by side, you'd see it. But where the designs have been clever is that they haven't changed it so much to have changed its identity. So, for example, the bezel is more open, the lugs are a bit sleeker. There's just all of these subtle changes that make it feel more contemporary. Same with the dials. They've gone for a sunray brushed silvery opaline, which again just looks very cool, very modern. No gimmicks. I like it a lot. Technically, I think the most important thing is that the power reserves have been increased, which makes it really great for a watch that you want to wear every day, or take off for the weekend, put on your sporty watch and come back to this for the weekdays. So that long power reserve is a real plus.
I'm a real stickler for symmetry, Sandra, as you probably know, and I find the Master Control calendar just one of the most beautifully executed calendar watches of recent times. It's classic, and yet still, as you say, some of these updates have made it really contemporary as well, which is a tough balancing act. But the symmetry is just perfect.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And going back to the mid-20th century, Jaeger was recognized as arguably the expert in calendar watch movements, and it supplied movements to a lot of the other great houses as well as producing them under its own brand. And we haven't seen this triple display calendar with a moon phase at Jaeger for a while, but what they've done is, as you say, they've taken that beautifully symmetrical, balanced, classical arrangement of the displays and just put it in a more contemporary, crisper setting. Another thing, by the way, when you look down to the bottom of the dial, you see the calendar hand, which has the little red J icon on it. You'll see it jumps from about hour 4 to hour 8. And that's because, I mean, it's an added complication, and they've done it because they don't want to hide the moon phase at any point, which I think is really cool.
Yes, no, I see. There's from 15 to 16, there's quite a smiley face of text that just reminds you exactly what it is, which is, a calendar watch.
It's almost a 45-degree jump. And that's, to put that extra complication into the watch, just so you can enjoy the moon phase more, I think it's great.
You'd be pretty excited at around about, that time of the month, just to watch that happen.
Yeah, it's like one of those party trick complications, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant. Very good point. Now, also, we have a reverso to match the boutique edition from 2019 for men in red.
If I may just pause as well, there's in the master control, there's a simple 3-hand plus date. And, as we all know, people either love or loathe date windows. But what Jaeger has done here, it's a very Jaeger Le-Coultre refinement. They've put a lovely little fillet around the date window, so it doesn't look like just a hole cut in the dial so you can see the date. They've they've been thoughtful about it. They've added that refinement so that it means something.
Do you know, that actually reminds me of, I'm wearing a big pilot today, and the 5002 big pilot had a coppery window around the date window. It had like a little aperture that was applied, and I loved that detail. And unfortunately, it is nowhere to be seen on this model. I actually think that I would probably trade this for a 5002 for that simple detail. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And then onto the reverso. Another absolute classic. It's no exaggeration to say that that design is an icon of 20th century watchmaking in the proper sense of the word icon. And the reverso one is the more refined, classically feminine one because it's narrower. The case is narrower. It's just slimmer overall, and in fact, it's closer to the design of the very first ladies' reverso back in 1931. But generally, the colors have always been very restrained. Ivory or silvery dials and so on. And because it's a very refined watch, and now, bam. We've got this amazing wine red color with a shiny strap that matches it. And it's suddenly lifted the reverso one into a whole new world. And I mean, I can see a lot more like younger women, a lot less conservative taste, really jumping on this. I think it's a fantastic look.
I have a little story for you. The first watch sold in the Sydney Jaeger Le-Coultre boutique was the boutique edition red reverso for men. So this is a colour for the genders, isn't it? It's it has neither male nor female characteristics necessarily.
Yeah, it's right. And this new red is not exactly the same, but it's very reminiscent of that special anniversary model done for men. But it's even more vivid and what's nice as well is they've got guillochage under the red lacquer. So it's very subtle. There's a bit of texture there. There's just that extra specialness. And the white numerals pop against it. And that font is particular to the reverso one. And when you look at it closely, it almost has that quality of being hand-drawn, like as if it's hand-painted on the dial.
It is. It's beautiful.
But best of all, it's that red. It's such a wow, and it's so different for reverso one.
And Sandra, there's you haven't mentioned the little bit of ice I see.
Yeah. Ice is nice. The reverso one always does have, the row of diamonds above and below. It's a characteristic of all the reverso ones, as opposed to the classic reverso, the mid-size and so on. But it's nicer, and to be able to get that as well, that little sparkle, the bright red and the steel, the contrast, the play of colours is lovely, and it's Jaeger's entry-level price, which is amazing.
Yes. Well, I think you're right. I really do feel that it's all about the numerals as well. I mean, while it has all these fundamental reverso one characteristics, I think in particular there's something very special about that font. Wonderful, Sandra. We have wrapped up Jaeger Le-Coultre.
Great.
I think we could move on to another brand.
I would say, Andrew, too, it's like Jaeger going back to what it does best, which is not showing off, just fantastic watchmaking without any gimmicks at all, brought up to, given a new contemporary twist. I like it.
Piaget, the kings of thin, are back with almost inconceivably thin watches this year. I still have Sandra Lane on Zoom in New Zealand. Sandra, 2 millimeters thick. I immediately think 2 millimeters thick. I just assume they're talking about the movement alone, but they're not. The 2 millimeters refers to the case.
The entire watch. It's absolutely astonishing, isn't it? And before I go any further, I sort of have to declare an interest in Piaget Ultra Thin, because this is one of my absolute favorites, right?
I see you.
That's the caliber 9P. My piece is from the early 1970s. In this watch, this caliber 9P which was developed in 1957, if you can believe it. The movement in this watch is 2 millimeters thick. So now Piaget has taken us to the entire watch being 2 millimeters thick. And that means like 2 credit cards piled one on top of the other. It's insane.
So we're back to, it is beautifully insane. And we're back to world record territory yet again for Piaget. This is a little bit like I don't know, let me think. Rafael Nadal and Federer just duking it out, taking trophies back off each other. It's the world's thinnest.
The key thing to realize here is this is the watch that Piaget presented 2 years ago as a concept watch.
The concept, yeah.
And as we know, it's one thing to do a concept watch, a one-off piece, and it's quite another to prove that you can make it in series, you can make it in quantity, and that's what this new release is. They took the concept watch from 2 years ago, and this is now a production piece. They've kept the word concept because they can, I guess. But this is the production version of that one-off concept piece that they did 2 years ago. And it's astonishing how they've managed to do it. Just rethinking how to construct a movement, rethinking the relationship between, the movement components and the case. The case is integrated into the movement. It's effectively the base plate. They've reworked every wheel. I mean, some of the wheels are like 0.12 millimeters thick. That's nuts.
It is. And the interplay between the wheels and the dial, there's really the way that the architecture has come together is extraordinary. And it's actually very attractive too. Sometimes these things can become just engineering objects, whereas this remains a thing of beauty in terms of its aesthetics.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the aesthetic is really, it's a beautiful looking watch, as well as being a piece of amazing engineering.
We actually had the concept piece in the office for an event with Piaget, and it was like feeding time at the zoo in that moment. We'll probably throw up a picture of it just up here, but there was a real, I think that there was just a sense of a frenzy, really, when people realized that they could touch this watch and that they were interacting with a watch unlike any other. So it's got some serious, for a thin and diminutive object, it is powerful. Yeah. And that's the thing too. I think what's interesting is Piaget has taken this approach to making an ultra-thin watch to show us what it's made of, like really to show us what it's made of from the front, which is a completely different aesthetic approach from Bulgari, which is the other record breaker in the past years. And Bulgari's approach has been from the back, you can see what we've done, but from the front, it's all about the sculpture that sits on your wrist. And I think it's so interesting having these two completely different approaches. Something else, Andrew, that I think is really worth noting is the material Piaget has used. It's a cobalt-based alloy, and they've used it not just because it looks great, but they had to find something else to use because gold would be too fragile, too unstable to have components and cases as thin as this. So it was like, it's a technical
practical solution as well as an aesthetic solution.
And that, I imagine that would have contributed to the weight of the piece. And I think weight is an overstatement because it has no weight. It weighs 21.7 grams.
Yeah. And that's...
Where's my emoji? This is my emoji right now.
Yeah. And there's another thing that I think is really worth mentioning is that, the images that have been supplied to us of the watch and that will be released, that will come with the press releases, there are 3 different colors. All that is a sample of what is possible, because what Piaget has done is they have set up a configurating system so that any buyer can choose any of thousands of permutations of different colors, different finishes, different straps, and so on. So this is not only an extraordinary watch, you can customize it so it's pretty much a unique piece that you'll be able to get for yourself. Which is, again, and that is just built into the offer. It's not an added extra.
Well, look, there's a lot of offer there.
It says a lot about where watchmaking is going, what collectors are looking for. They don't want something called a limited edition. They want something that really resonates with them. And if they can configure their own finishes, colors, and so on, that's worth so much more, I think.
Well, speaking of customers and targeted audience, I am not the targeted audience for the Limelight Gala, and yet I would count myself among its biggest fans. This is a watch that I think is as iconic and singular a design as a tank, as a Datejust.
Yeah. Again, it's amazing to see how Piaget has taken a design that was so far ahead of its time when it was first conceived. The round case version was in the 1960s and the oval case version was in the 1970s. Those designs were so far ahead of their time that even now they look avant-garde. And I just love what they've done with this new one with the graduated sapphires and diamonds. And I'll just check my note here. You get 20 diamonds and 22 sapphires. And they've developed a new setting for them. So they're not only graduated in size, but the setting almost disappears under the stone. So you barely see the metal at all. You just see the light of the stones.
The patrimony, which it's almost like the yin and yang of precious stones, is extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And, Piaget has developed such strong jewelry skills over the decades, not forgetting that they were a watchmaker before anything, but they have developed such strong jewelry skills, such strong gold working skills. I mean, that beautiful texturing on the bracelet. When you feel those bracelets, they feel as soft as a satin ribbon. They are really works of high jewelry in the best sense of the word. And then the colors.
That is we saw the jewelers at SIHH in other years showing how painstaking that bracelet finish is to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an amazing piece. And, even though it's only, we say only 32 millimeters, but the design is so strong that on the wrist, it looks bigger and it has a lot more presence than many other 32 millimeter watches.
Yes. Well, I think it's two models that really play to Piaget's great strengths, and again, I think they're both watches that are powerful on the wrist in different ways.
Yeah, I think they're both very, very powerful statements of what Piaget is really good at.
Sandra, thank you so much for guiding us through that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and let's look forward to seeing each other IRL very soon.
Indeed. Thanks, Sandra. Here's hoping.